Good afternoon, everybody. This is Pamela coming at you with a video vlog. I feel it's important to talk about how our constituents are not willing to work together. This has been going on since before Joe Biden took office. You know, people say Joe Biden called Donald Trump a Nazi. Maybe so. But the hatred and bigotry comes from both sides. We have constituents that don't want to take the time to work together. They took a fucking vacation over the summer when our country is going down the tubes. As I've said, farmers are suffering. Everyday working class men and women are suffering, while the rich are getting paid higher and higher in terms of money, while we, the regular, everyday working American class, are getting nothing. Food prices are going astronomically high. Gas prices are going up. You know, our country has had its problems, but before we were always able to work through them. But now, in the age of Donald Trump, and even before that, young people were getting their hands on guns and using them against teachers, their parents, other friends and or relatives. But, they don't want to take the time to sort out their problems. Why did I get fired from my job? Is there anything I could do to possibly get my job back? But the person who gets fired, they go out, they get their gun, and they drive back. And they end up shooting their coworkers or their boss. Our country has a problem. One is a fucking mental issue. And two, you get young people that get a hold of these guns and think that there is an instant gratification of power. And they don't think that there is serious consequences for that. I heard about a woman that had a mental defect. I think she's on the autism spectrum. But this woman worked at a Walmart. She was told that she could not go home. Even when she wasn't feeling well, I guess they were short-staffed and they told her she could not go home. She worked the damn night shift. And by the next day, she came back ranting and raving, screaming at her coworkers. And she said, "I have to yell or I'm going to shoot someone." And a coworker went to the boss and they told her, you have to go. We don't want you here. She was acting dangerous. They called the police. And she tried to say, "I wasn't going to do it. I was just acting out my frustration." And the cop that was talking to her said, "If you're having these feelings and you're wanting to say that you're going to shoot somebody, you need to go and seek professional help." And the woman said, "I don't have no job then." And I'm sitting there thinking, hell no, woman, you don't have a job. You scream and yell at your coworkers and you threat to shoot your boss? Are you kidding me? But people like Donald Trump don't see that we don't have a gun problem in this country. We don't see that many people that get these guns also have a mental problem. Donald Trump doesn't see that he is radicalizing his base, kind of like Al-Qaeda, kind of like Al-Qaeda trying to brainwash their people into thinking that they should do this, this, and this. It's no different. And I'm sick and tired of the constant merry-go-round of who's to blame. My feeling is you either start working together to fix these problems or we're going to vote you out. I'm not advocating for violence. When Kamala lost the election, none of us went to the Capitol to protest it. We thought, okay, she lost the election. Let's get this Next 4 years underway, and we'll figure it out as we go along. But we can't work things out if the constituents aren't willing to work together to balance the budget, pass any laws that need to be passed, and basically help our farmers get the help they need so that we can have food to eat in the summer, fall, and winter. But we're not getting any better, are we, under Trump? We're not getting better at all, period. And somebody said, "Lady, you're just asking for trouble. God's going to judge you." Maybe so, but I'm standing by my rights as a person. I should have the right to be able to go to the doctor, get the treatment that I need, and if I had a child that was transgender and whatnot, they deserve to have the medical care that they need. Because hospitals and doctors that don't give the kids that are transgender, if they get dreadfully sick, like they get cancer or some other type of disease, they would be breaking their Hippocratic oath. I heard that Nationwide Children's in Columbus, Ohio, is starting to deny transgender children treatment. That to me is breaking the HIPAA oath that these doctors and nurses take to take care of any and all patients. I think the Hippocratic oath is to do no harm to said patient that needs the help, whether you agree with it or not. Donald Trump wants to institutionalize disabled people. He wants to put women back in the home. We're talking 1930s, 1940s type shit. The husband goes out, makes all the money, while the wife stays home and changes babies' diapers and maybe pop out more babies. It's not like that anymore. Things are so high now. Any evidence of food that we do buy is in such a small container, it's ridiculous. We pay more for less. But yet the government is fighting over this and this and this instead of focusing on real problems like helping the middle class get the help they need, help the elderly get the help they need, help the disabled people get jobs. I'm 54 years old. I had one job that took a real interest in me in the summer youth employment program in 89 and 90. But they had a hiring freeze. I couldn't go back to work for the state. A lot of my fellow co-workers have worked through their careers and retired. And other places that were hiring for people overlooked me for somebody else. And today's kids have this mentality that they don't have to work. That's bullshit. A lot of these kids sit on their Xboxes or their tablets and they play games all day. They don't want to work. They'd rather be lazy and live off mom and dad's dime. That's another problem we need to work out. But again, most parents don't take the time to interface with their children. They give them a tablet, they leave the room, and they leave the kids alone. I don't know where we went wrong in this country, but something has definitely gone wrong. Too many people playing the entitlement card. Too many people playing the racial bias card. And too many people are being overlooked. Too many people that want to work and make something of themselves are often overlooked because of their disability. I've been there and done that so many times, I could probably write a book on it. And it's a shame. Because when I was in my 20s, I was an eager beaver ready to work. Now here I am at almost 55 years old next May. I wouldn't have enough Easter egg to live on, or a nest egg if you want to call it that. I wouldn't have enough of an Easter egg to live on if I had enough money. Because things are so high, older people have had to go back to work. Nobody in their 60s and 70s should have to go back to work. They did their time in the workforce, They should be able to retire and live out the rest of their lives with family and friends, maybe go fishing or take a small trip somewhere. But they can't because inflation is so high, it's ridiculous. And yet, people are coming on my channel saying, oh, I advocate for violence. No, I want some sanity in this country. What happened to sanity? Did we lose our ability to be able to interface calmly and rationally? I think we have. And I'm telling our constituents, from Mike DeWine up to Donald Trump, if he can get that bong resin out of his head long enough to actually work on the problems at hand instead of trying to turn this country into a police state. You know, if he wasn't acting like such a king and trying to make himself rich and not help the poor out. I've heard stories that people are saying that they should kill the homeless. You know, and I heard he was going to send the National Guard to places like Chicago and California, but I heard he backed out on that. People are heckling Donald Trump, and they have good reason to heckle him. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He'd rather stir up hate and division rather than do the job that is given to him. And as far as I know, it's still the people's house. And when it comes November, when full election time comes up again, I'm going to vote for somebody else other than Trump. I don't care if I have to vote for Donald Duck to get him out of office. I don't vote for somebody that wants to take away my rights as a person and as a woman. I have to speak up for my niece. She cannot speak for herself. I have to speak up for anybody that can't speak up for themselves. And like I said, I'm tired of all sides stabbing each other in the back. Once they put their big people pants on and they start doing the job that we pay them to do, I'm watching the fallout as we speak. But like I said, it's not my problem. I didn't vote for what's going on in this country. You know, and let's just remember, the guy who shot Charlie Kirk was one of the Republicans, a radicalized MAGA. And they actually showed a picture of this guy's mother holding a assault-style weapon. And from what I heard on the news, the young man who shot Charlie Kirk used a weapon that was used in World War I and World War II up through the Korean War. And as I've said, they need to prosecute him. I hope they look into his family. The one smart thing his father did was turn him in. But rather than work on putting up a statue to Charlie Kirk, we need to work out the problems that this country has. And right now, this country has a massive problem. That's it. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm talking about constituents, young, old, and in between, to sit down and have an honest-to-God discussion. You know, can you do it without your weapons? I want to have a good, honest conversation. I want to see it done without people getting killed. Nobody has to die because we don't agree with each other. But then there are people out there in the world, from Generation X to Generation Z, that have it in their heads that they have to use violence as a ways to an end, right? I'm not that way. People call me a pussy because I don't have a gun. I have a reason. I don't think I could get one because I have a disability anyway. And I think those that have the mentality to use a gun on somebody else because we don't agree with each other, they're the ones that don't deserve the weapons. I want a good, honest conversation. And I finally had my honest conversation with my family, with what's happened to me over the course of my life while they were out there living their hottie-da lives. And my sister heard about all the trauma that I'd been through, and she apologized. She goes, I didn't know you went through all that stuff you said. And I said, well, I have. That's why I often talk about it, so I let others that have been accosted or abused by certain people in the world, I let them know they're not alone. And when I hear people like Donald Trump bragging about grabbing women by their genitals, I get really triggered really quick. Because women are not sexual play toys that you could just walk up on without our consent. In truth, I think Donald Trump should be in jail with old Harvey. Maybe he should end up on Epstein Island. And don't give me that crap that he wasn't involved with Epstein. Bullshit. I've seen pictures of him with Jeffrey Epstein. I want the Epstein files released. I want our constituents to work together. And if Trump ain't willing to do that, he needs to get out of the people's house. And for those that want to ask me about my eyebrows, I think my eyebrows just fall out. I have very thin hairs up here. You know, it's called alopecia for the eyebrows. You know, hairs just falls out. But I'm doing the best I can in these trying times. And I want people to have a cooler head and have honest discussions. You might not agree with me, but hear me out. That is all I ever wanted. But if Donald Trump isn't willing to do that, or his MAGA base isn't willing to do that, then you're going to be seeing more things like what we've seen over the last week. That's the truth. I've said what I said. Now, you guys can have your own debates. I'm done talking about Charlie Kirk. All I want to do is get through the rest of this fucking year without anything bad happening. So, check out YouTube about all these crazy people that go into work and they want to, quote, unalive their boss. I told you about the woman at a Walmart that wanted to yell at people, that had this mentality of yelling at people, or she would shoot her boss. That scares me. And they wonder why brick and mortar stores are going away and more people are ordering online. They don't have to deal with the nut jobs and the crazy people that go to Walmart. They could just order it on their tablet and have it delivered that day or in a few days. So, yeah. The only time I go out anymore is to doctor's appointments or to go visit family. And they have heard my reasons as to why I don't trust Trump any further than I could throw him. I laid out all my hopes and fears, but we are so far down, we may never come back from this. And I stay away from most media these days. Most days I watch body cams of people acting the fool on camera. Or I watch restoration videos. It keeps my blood pressure down. Sometimes that shit helps me go to sleep. And I want to issue a challenge to people. Can you unplug from big news for the next month? I don't think so. But if our constituents aren't willing to work together, then our country's finished. Too many people are so quick to grab weapons like your AK-47s or even a small gun like a Luger. They think they could solve their problems by using weapons like guns. Let's not forget the cop, Brian Sicknick, who died when some jackass threw a fire extinguisher at his head, and he would later die from his injuries. That shouldn't have had to happen. And the woman that was shot going into the rotunda, or trying to get into the rotunda, was begged and pled by her husband not to go. But under the Trump spell, she went to that rotunda and she wound up getting killed. But if we aren't willing to put our differences aside and have a good, simple conversation and how to get this country back on track, then the great experiment has failed. Well, that's the last thing I'm going to say about Charlie Kirk for a while, until we hear about a trial. Until then, try and keep it civil. That's all I'm saying. Don't use revenge. Just try and say your piece and keep a level head about it. If you're not willing to do that, maybe you need to seek professional help. You know, the smart thing about my two brothers and my brother-in-law is that they had the common sense to do their jobs and not bum rush the Capitol when Trump lost the election in 2020. They stayed away from that. But the people that did that in 2020, they got their payment. And those that were promised releases from the president, when they didn't get it, some of them committed suicide. It's called being taken to the cleaners. So, there's dirty pool on both sides. They need to get their shit together or this country's finished. Have a good night, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Look out for your family. And for God's sake, try to keep a level head. Because if we don't, the USA as a whole is done. I'm out. Bye.